this goes a lot better when I'm sitting down having a conversation with people. So I thought I'd sit down and we can have a conversation just about, we talked about this morning with Luke about building your team up, ways that you can recruit, things like that. But what's part 2 to that, right? Like, okay, I have a team. What do I do now? How do I lead them? What all do I give up? What do I take on? Those different things. And so this is just time that I think, this is stuff that over time I think I've just kind of processed, and that's worked for me in all types of situations, from larger churches down to the church where I got back in the ministry and started with like 4 or 5 people, right? So it doesn't matter your budget. It doesn't matter your resources. It doesn't matter the size of the church. None of that matters. What matters is you. So this is just going to be a walk down memory lane. We're having our first coffee date, and you say, tell me a little bit about yourself. And I'm going to go down there and kind of spell out how like leadership theory kind of dropped in my life. So, but yeah, I love doing this stuff. I really live for not so much the gear and stuff, like I love it, but it was like my means to finding an avenue, right? Like becoming a tech guy or something was always really cool, and I was also involved in worship, so I was doing a lot of worship, but it's just my means to finding what I've really found a passion for, which is leading people and working with teams. And while I'm not like the extreme extrovert, I found that I really love connecting with people, and my win isn't necessarily behind a console or on stage even, but my win is when I get to see a team that I've empowered, when they get to see their hard work pay off and salvation's on the other side of that. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with things. So my background, I'm a Floridian, born and raised, got the nice Florida stickers. There's some guys here from Florida. I'm jealous that they get to go back and not me. But I grew up primarily in the Nazarene church, and like I was always there, got involved. And what's cool about that is it was tight-knit, so I was able to do a lot, but then I kind of grew. And as I grew, I went out into the production world and tried to cut my teeth and moved up to Nashville and really just knocked on doors and stuff. And so after, I don't know, like a year and a half of just knocking on doors and kind of like, I need another gig, I thought, it's time for me to get something more steady. So I'm going to go into the steady role of ministry. So I started applying everywhere, you know. And from Nashville, I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, and took on my first like real job as a tech director at an Elevation Church. So this was like 2010, 11, I don't know. And the church was fairly new, but extremely rapidly growing, right? So there was one tech director that was there at the time, and then they brought me on as like part 2 to that to help like grow these portable campuses that were popping up. So when I say portable, like how many of you guys are in portable campus right now? Yeah? Okay, we understand each other. Like, you're my people, I'm your people. Like, we went into a YMCA gym, right? Saturday night after the gym closed, we had some pods that we had back behind the gym. We had some trailers in a nearby place, and like we would build a worship center out of this like concrete, ugly YMCA gym. So we'd like roll the floors out. We would like do all these things. We'd go up in the track and we would black out the windows and hang lights. We'd do all of it. And so it was cool, but like it was a lot of work, right? Like literally like rolling flooring out, building a stage deck, stacking PA, doing all the things. But like this is where we start diving into leadership. So I got brought on as a TD, right? And then, but we're growing, and we didn't have what they called a producer at the time. So the producer was like the person who was pouring into the volunteers, right? They're making sure all the AVLs working at the campus, and so that became my role. They're like, we need you in this season to really like pour into people, build people, and I was like, oh, cool, no problem. Like I love people. So I jumped in, and like I started pushing road cases with them every week. I was there like loading in, loading out, doing all the things, and I would just notice that I was like one of 4 people on staff, and like I was the only one pushing a road case. Like, what the heck, right? Like, aren't we all kind of in this together? Like, this is what leadership is, right? Like, I'm charging the front lines with my team, you know? And I remember just carrying this feeling of like each week, like this building resentment because, again, like I thought leadership was pushing a road case. Like, I'm with you. Like, I'm right next to you. And there's a bit of that that's there, right? But, like, I really started carrying like this. What is leadership, right? And so I had to kind of stop and ask myself after a while. And stupid me at 22 was like, they're doing it wrong. I'm doing it right, you know, because 22, we know everything. And so I'm leading a group of volunteers. I'm in it with them. I love them. They love me, you know. Like, I'm a leader. Like, yeah, I have people, so I thought. In reality, my lesson in leadership was coming on the other side of burnout and having to step away from a position I loved in a church I loved because I really didn't know what leadership was. And I didn't know what leading a team really was. So it wasn't until I was able to look back on my time there and wondering, like, what went wrong over time in my service there and being in other capacities of volunteering that I really learned what leadership was outside of having to leave, like, my dream job, right? So once I left, you know, I went up to the DC area and I did installs. I'm doing all the things and I'm helping out at churches and people like really value the opinion, right? Because like you're the elevation guy, whatever. And I started applying to other churches all over the country, you know, and I'm called to ministry. I'm called to this. So I started applying. And I was just straight up rejected by so many people around the country. And I really didn't know why, right? Like, what's going on? And it was like when it talked about technical aptitude, all these things, like, yeah, you can do the job. But it was because my leadership, they didn't think that it was good quality. So to peel that back a little bit, what I thought was leadership before actually changed, right? So the reason I was passed up church after church was because I basically wouldn't be the guy to get down in the trenches full-time anymore for anyone, right? That's not healthy for me. It wasn't healthy for my spouse. It wasn't healthy for my new baby. Like, and I knew that potentially going back into ministry. Like, I'll be there with you guys. Like, I'll be with the team, but they wanted someone to be the audio expert, the lighting guru, like make all the awesome light shows. And like, for some reason, they always thought like, oh, you know how to like push a fader, so you must be a great like IT networking guy too. Like, anyone deal with that? No? And no, you have no idea what you're doing? Right, yeah, me too. So, you know, and they straight up, it was like, you're not a good cultural fit because, you know, at this point in my life, like I said, like, I knew I wasn't going to go back to that level of burnout. But every church I went to, I was like, I'm not your lighting guy. Like, I'm not. Are you a lighting person? Anyone lighting people? We're like, you really, perfect. We also understand each other. I hate lights, hate them. Like, I don't know, go to Home Depot, but if sound doesn't work, right, you got nothing. So like, go sound people. So I would tell them like, I'm not your lighting guy, but I'll find you a lighting guy and I'll find you someone who's passionate about lighting. And when they're passionate about it, like the church is going to win, like you're going to win, the church is going to grow, the team's going to grow. But they didn't like that, you know? And it was just, it was really weird. But I just knew I wasn't that guy. And so I just carried that with me. And I just, you know, ministry just wasn't in the cards at the time. So I kept volunteering, and it kept on, like, I could see God kind of pushing me through areas of ministry, and like I was able to really hone in on my skills of being able to like just play guitar and like what I did before when I was in Nashville and hadn't done in a couple years, and I was able to like weave my way in and out. And some of you might be in that, right? Like this might not be your full-time gig yet, or maybe you're in it somewhat and you're like, man, ministry is rarely where I'm supposed to be, but God's kind of like, not yet. So just stay in there as a little side note. But yeah, so needless to say, like I'm super stoked that like I wasn't a good cultural fit for some of these places, right? Like my family wouldn't be where we are today if I had gone down to Mobile, Alabama, you know, different things like that. And but that's a super long intro to say that like I had done in my volunteering time, I was doing a lot of video conference installation things in the DC area, and it was awesome. I loved it. Got to travel on like the federal government's dime. Like, hey yo, where are you at? I know, where's NASA? Where's he at? Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Okay. But yeah, so after about 7 years, I quit that job to jump back in the ministry. And at this point, everything that I thought about leadership and that I told people and that I was being passed up on job opportunities for, I was able to actually put into practice. Like, is what I think on the other side of all this, like, real? Am I able to really do it? So now we can dive into kind of what that leadership looks like and how I kind of let it unfold.
Hey, it's Jake. Before we continue, I wanted to invite you to our next Churchfront live gathering. Link down below in the description of this video. And if we are running a discount on registration, you'll see a discount code below this video as well. Churchfront live gatherings are an amazing way to experience live training from experts like Jesse. And at these events, we cover a wide variety of worship ministry topics: theology, technology, leading a team, musicianship, getting your ministry organized. And not only will you get to experience these trainings in person, you'll also get an opportunity to network with both my team, the guest experts who are coming to the event, and also other like-minded worship leaders who are going to be at the gathering. So click the link down below to learn more and register today.
So I jump back into this TD or church production role, and this is kind of what I do now whenever I'm approaching leading a team or how to talk to people. So we'll hit some scripture. I'm not a pastor. I don't study the Bible like pastors do. And so bear with me if you don't like the version of the Bible that I'm about to quote, okay? All right, so 1 Corinthians 12, Christian Standard Bible, verse 12. For just as the body is one and has many parts, and all the parts of the body, though many, are one body, so also is Christ. Anyone know this one? Yeah? Great. We're going to keep going because we're going to let it sink in. For we all are baptized by one Spirit into a body, whether Jews or Greeks, whether slaves or free, and we are all given one Spirit to drink. Indeed, the body is not one part, but many. If the foot should say, because I'm not a hand, I don't belong to the body, it is not for that reason any less a part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I don't belong to the body, it is not for that reason any less a part of the body. You start seeing where we're going, right? So if we jump down and it says that God has put the body together, giving greater honor to the less honorable, so that there would be no division in the body, but that the members would have the same concern for each other. So if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. If one member is honored, then the members rejoice with it. Now you are the body of Christ and an individual members of it. So here's my takeaway, right? We are a part of the body. We are a part of the capital C church body. You are a part of your church's body, you who lead your tech team, right? So your team is a part of the church's body, and you are like the heartbeat of your team's body, right? So we can break down those things of what the body means. So now I'm going to tap into my pastor's leadership talks, right? If you ever listen to Craig Rowe's show, he does these things. So this is what we're going to cover, 3 things today. Our role is to lead. So we're going to learn what that means to lead. And then we're going to empower. And then we're going to equip. So those are the 3 things that we're going to go through real quick. And then at the end, we'll kind of dive into systems. If you guys want to hear what systems are, what we use or anything like that, or just ideas that we might want to hit before a panel, if we do that again. And we can kind of go back and forth on this leadership things. But those are the 3 things that are really important to me and that I tried to I can kind of go off on tangents. So this is what I'm trying to really focus in on with everyone. So the passage we read. God arranged the body just as he wanted it, and if they were all the same, where would the body be, right? So if you're a leader, but you're not leading by equipping and empowering your team, you're not a leader. Cool? You get that? Like I get this concept is kind of like, dude, I'm a stud. You don't know me. I'm a stud. I can do it all. I can do it all. How many of you do it all? Like full disclosure, how many of you do it all? And I've been there. Like you're it. They go to you. All right. So like you heard what Luke said about getting a team. So that's step 1, right? But now you need to know how to like build into them. And so part of that is knowing that if you're not empowering and you're not equipping, you're not leading, right? So we got to kind of break this like way of operating of I need to be the guy, I need to be the one, and I want them to come to me, right? So the issue is if you can't get out of the way of yourself and give things or tasks away to someone else that like they could do, right? You may be missing the blessing that not only God has for you, but also letting God bless the person who could take something off your plate and letting them see what they do through somebody else, right? Like I said, my biggest thing, I could get emotional talking about it. My biggest thing that I love is standing in the back of the room, watching a team that's put their time and effort into executing Easter, Christmas, a random weekend. It doesn't matter, right? When a hand goes up, that person who just hit spacebar, right? Just hit spacebar. They didn't just hit spacebar. They just ushered somebody into the kingdom, right? Like, that's a huge deal. So if you're doing all of it and you're figuring out ways to automate all of it, you're missing a blessing that God's putting on your life and that he could put on someone else's life. So you want to give that away. And I get what you might be thinking too, because I had to struggle with this, which is like, we're saying that God has a plan for us and we need to lead, but we have to give up things. But if you start understanding the concept, and I think Luke hit it too, which is we serve with, they don't serve us for. They're not a warm body, like I think he said earlier today. And that's like totally key, right? You can still serve with, but they don't serve us for, right? So we got to kind of do this dance of like figuring out what that looks like in a way that's not, and I think I'll say it again, but you don't want to abdicate a responsibility. You want to delegate, right? And we'll dive into that a little bit more. But I had a volunteer a few years back, and he was amazing. He was a stud. He was a leader. He's the kind of dude that would walk through a literal fire with me if I told him to do it, because there's a salvation on the other side. Like, he's that kind of dude. Seriously, he's a beast. And there was a time that he felt like he was maybe overworked because, like, he was my go-to guy, right? And I was like, hey, man, his name is Talon. We call him Juice Box. I don't know why. And Claw, because, like, he just has a few names. But Claw, get it? Like talons on a bird, claw, yeah. But I was like, man, I need your help. Listen, we got to go. We got to clean up backstage, right? Because somehow, like, tech people, we get blamed for, like, the mess. You know, I get it. So I'm like, I need your help. I really don't have a lot of time to, like, do this by myself. But if we could do it together, like, we can really, like, organize this thing. Well, dude completely ghosted me, right? Like, completely ghosted me. So I had a choice. And I was asking myself, like, in this moment, am I abdicating a task that I don't want to do on my own? Or was I empowering this guy and delegating something to this guy? And, like, I had to really ask myself that, because, like, I don't like cleaning up things by myself. I barely like cleaning up after my kids, right? Like, it's not an enjoyable thing. It's not what, like, gets our engine going to, like, do something. But my conclusion and all that was, like, I'm willing to be in the trenches with this guy, and if he's going to flake, well, I don't need you, you know? Just because you can delegate something doesn't mean that, like, you don't do it or you can't do it. So I did what any passive-ish person would do, and I cleaned up that place so good. Man, it was spotless. Like, it was great. And everyone noticed, and he noticed. And so he comes back, right, and he's like, who helped you? And my response was, like, no one. I did this myself. And it's like, I don't need you to do a task for me. I want you to have the task and the opportunity to leave your mark on this ministry, right? Because I want him to get the pat on the back. So that's the thing. Like, who's your person? And when you find that person or those people, you're giving them opportunities so that you can elevate them. And when you elevate them and they get recognition from maybe your leadership staff or your pastor, your lead pastor, that, like, gives them a fire. That's ownership. Like, they really start to feel that. And that's what I was trying to get him to do. And that really stuck with him. Pause, coffee. So, like I said, right, it's a dance of finding, like, this line of how much am I going to give away? I know I need to be in the trenches a little bit, but, like, how do I get there where I'm not, like, doing everything? So my first year or two at that church was, like, a lot of trenches. Who's done the 2 a.m.s before Easter morning? Yeah, we're my people, right? Who's been there by themselves at 2 or 3 in the morning? Yeah, my people. So, like, I had those people, but I also had those volunteers who were, like, there with me, like, in the trenches. But during those times, you're building relational equity. Like, So I think Luke mentioned it. I'll say it again. You don't need resources to get people. You need you being intentional with people to build a team, right? And so when you do that with them and you give them those opportunities, and it's an opportunity to be at the church at 2 a.m. the Sunday or the Saturday before you kick off your Easter weekend, right? Because on the other side of those, what's going to happen? Hands raised, salvations, right? And they're going to take that with them. So those are the kind of the things that we have to do. We have to lead through that. So now that we have that groundwork, we're going to talk about empower. So this is your part 2. Point number 2, if you're taking notes, empower. And empower doesn't mean like congrats. You get to schedule planning center now. You get to take this off me, right? Or hey, you get to do my pro presenter lyrics, so that when the worship pastor doesn't give you the right lyrics, you get to say, well, they didn't do it right. That's not empowering people. You're abdicating, right? Those are tasks, and you can delegate those tasks, but you're not delegating a task. You're empowering them and giving them authority to act on your behalf, right? So if you say, I need you to take over scheduling, which I did. So I started off my church with like 4 people, 5 people, to do like a weekend full. And I think we had a Saturday night service at the time. And those 4 people became my leaders, right? And we had, basically we'd have a Saturday crew, a Sunday crew, and I empowered them. Like you had the role of like, you scheduled our volunteers as it grew. Because it started to grow, right? And it didn't become a thing of like, I don't want to schedule. It became a thing of like, I want you to get to know people, because I can't be the person. So like, how many people have more than like 5 volunteers? Yeah? Do you like manage all those people? Yeah, it's too many. It's too many. But I can pour into 4 people like really well. So that's what I started doing, right? I started delegating authority to people to start building teams. And then he got with the other leaders and they started building their teams. And they got to know each individual who was serving on their teams in a way that I would never be able to do, because it starts to get too much. It's too many people, right? So you're delegating authority on your behalf. Now, I recognize that this is super hard to commit to. And I also realize this is super hard to convince your lead pastor sometimes to like extend you grace to do, right? Because technology is technology and things are gonna fail, but you have to like go into this knowing where you have to like fall on the sword. Like I fell on the sword for my team a ton of times, but when the volunteer knows that like they messed up, right? Because you've empowered them, like this is on you. They messed up, but you have their backs and you take ownership for that because you saw something in them. There's a different kind of relational equity now that you're gonna build with that person and that individual when you walk through a fire just to do it with you. And on the other side of that, the same analogy, they will walk through a fire with you. So don't hear me say like, give people free will. Like they go do whatever they want. Like, I believe you're gonna do this well. There needs to be like clear expectations. There needs to be clear boundaries. So you also need to have a space, and you need to be the kind of leader who is going to have open and honest conversation for both of you, so that your team can grow, because we're all the body, right? You might be the heartbeat, but you need the brain and you need all of the limbs. So if you're not communicating, there's gonna be a problem. So little side note, you've gotta be really okay to live in the ways of giving and receiving feedback, okay? You have to receive feedback. You're a tech person. You know a lot of things. Sometimes just receive. I've been there. And it's hard to like, if you have a spouse, they tell you this in premarital counseling, right? Sometimes you need to just wait. Let the person talk. Don't be thinking about your response. Let them finish. It's the same thing. So while you might think you're killing it, man, I'm leading this person great. Like this team's killing it. They have a totally different perspective than you. You're the one on staff. You're the one that's supposed to be there for like 40 hours a week, and then serving. They're doing their job for 40 hours a week and then serving. Like, what's their perspective? So you have to really get into that mode where you can give and receive feedback. But that's totally another, topic that you could go into. But so we've laid out this look of what leadership is, and we need to empower people, right? Like we delegate authority, but now we have to equip our leaders that we're building up, right? Like equipping or like giving people authority doesn't so much matter if they don't have the right things and they're not equipped with the right tools. So for me, it can mean a lot of things. Like, this is your flock. These are your people. And we don't want to just show this, like, we want them to know that this is their active service and their way of worship. And we need to recognize that. Like, somebody who's an extrovert or an introvert should not be greeting people at the doors, right? And that's how we end up with a lot of our volunteers, because they're introverts. But what we need to recognize is, like, this is their act of worship. This is the way that they might not be the front row, hands raised kind of person, but they're like, they could be stone cold and hitting spacebar or being behind a camera. This is their way to worship. So for our context of equipping, we need to keep that in mind, but we also need to provide them systems that actually work properly, because none of us want that stare back to front of house, right? We all know it. Something went wrong. It's not your fault. But everyone does this, right? And we don't want to be responsible for that. We want to set our teams up for success. So I think this just happened. Like, I think Jake posted about it, where, like, the spin wheel of death, right? Things we can avoid, we want to avoid, but things are going to happen. So we want to make sure that we're empowering them, we're doing the right systems. And so when I think of equipping my team in this context, we do it to give them a win, because we need them to have a good experience when they're serving. And when it's a good experience for them, then we know that it's been a good experience for the attender. So if I'm trying to have a computer do 4 things, right? Like, I've done this. We were talking about, like, Logic yesterday. I've had Logic or Nuendo or something recording, and I thought, it should be fine. I'm just going to have ProPresenter throw a graphic on a back screen. It wasn't fine. It crashed a lot, and it kept crashing, and I had to keep coming up with excuses, and I don't like that. And so you have to think, like, what am I doing to set up my team? So whenever it crashed, people look back, and they're looking at my team, right? And ultimately, it comes back on me. So if I'm trying to, like, make a computer do 4 things, I'm overloading it, I'm setting up a volunteer to fail. Like, get okay with telling yourself that. Like, you are responsible for the system. You, if you don't spend the money the right way, if you don't equip the person the right way, you've made a decision to set up that person to fail. That's just the reality of it, right? So I'm going to honor my team with the right equipment. So when they come in early and they stay late, they're walking away with a smile, with their hearts full, knowing that they just made a kingdom impact, right? They don't feel responsible for what happened, because if we don't keep this in mind and we give them a subpar system to work in, they're probably going to leave discouraged, and they're going to probably think that they weren't good enough or that they messed it up. But reality is, like, we could have prevented it. So we want to honor them and our church by building a solid system and creating a distraction-free environment, right? So the tip about, like, the land of open feedback. This one is going to be hard a little bit too, I think, for some of us. Sometimes this is when you have to give feedback vertically. You know, how many times has your pastor said, I saw something on YouTube and I want you to do it? Like, it was this big thing, and it's, like, totally out of reach, but, like, make it happen, because you're the guy, right? You're a stud. You can go to Home Depot and make anything happen, right? So it's like, we need to fill in the blank of something that's not tangible because your lead pastor saw it from, like, Hillsong, whatever. Sometimes you need to be honest and have your team's best interest in mind, and you have to say that you're not able to provide a solution that works within your means or budget, period, all right? And sometimes that means, like, it's just not financial, it's also personnel, right? Like, you can't be the person to do everything. If you're married and you're that person, you don't want, like, resentment to build up from your spouse to the church, right? Like, you have to protect that. You have to protect your people. And so the system really is only as good as the people who can support it. So Example, if Life Church Online was like riding on the back of just me to manage or maintain as a broadcast support engineer, it would tank, right? Tank. It wouldn't be good. It wouldn't look good. I wouldn't have a job because it takes a team, right? It takes a team. It takes a team. So what you need to do as a leader is get some clarity, right? You need to get clarity from your pastor. We can't be like church style media text. How do I get my pastor to see things your way? It's not how that works, right? Get clarity. What can you do to support them? And what are you trying to accomplish by this, right? Because by saying no, but sometimes you're actually going to help further the relationship down the field a little bit more. But your systems have to be built around the vision of that leader. So that could be a lead pastor, it's a leadership team, or basically whoever's signing your checks, right? You need that clarity. And so many times we get excited over like new gear, and we can utilize something, or like we can make this piece of black magic gear do like 7 things. It's gonna be awesome. Example, a kid in Miami just sent me a message. He saw this thing that Bethel did a while ago with like this slow motion thing. And it's like a $9,000 like plug-in piece of gear, and he tried to do it with a decimator, which like applaud it, like awesome way of thinking, but it didn't work because it just wasn't the right thing. But so we get stuck in this, like we want to do like new and exciting things, but we need to ask like, how does this product or this system support the goal of our church or organization, or in line with my leader's vision? So that system, if it's only as good as the team who supports it, which might only be you, like, again, you might be the stud, but it doesn't matter, because if your church isn't bought into it, your leadership's not bought into it, then all of your work is essentially for nothing, because they won't leverage it. So before you go into a leadership meeting, how to execute, get some really good clarity, right? That's that feedback culture. And so once you get clarity, then start to build your systems and start equipping your people, right? Because we want them to succeed. We want them to have a win. So where do we start after we get clarity or direction? Whenever I look to make a purchase, right, I have to look at a few different things. Like, how does what I'm about to purchase directly affect or support my pastor? Right? How does it, because that's what you're there for. You're not there for just a paycheck. You're there to support their vision, their mission, like that you're on board for that. So, and I have to ask that. So what does it do to support my pastor? How does this positively impact our organization, like internally? Can I use it for more departments? If you're the tech guy doing live stuff, and then there's a creative media person who's like, they take pictures and they do things outside, or they're tasked with doing intro videos. Like, how can you use this new camera to use in different ways, right? Like, could it impact the organization as a whole? And then I have to ask, like, how does this impact those outside of our organization, right? And that can be a community partner. That could be an event that's about to come take place in your building or your space. There's some guys I know that said they were sharing a space with another church. Like, could you partner with them? How does it affect externally? So once you have that clarity, you start asking those questions. That's when you can start moving forward, right? But overall, to set our teams up for a win, buy it right or buy it twice. Write it down. Buy it right or buy it twice, because you don't want to get into a situation where you're just buying things, right? You want things to work. You want to have your people in mind. So if you can't afford to go ahead and like do this huge rollout, call someone, an integrator or whatever, start thinking like, what can I do to start from the ground floor, right? So as a leader, you're going to start thinking through those things. So for some equipment and broadcast systems, or just systems in general, we think redundancy. How can I be, systems fail? So like one system that fails that's audio is a MADI network. MADI network is just this loop, right? And if one part of the loop fails, then MADI dies. Poor MADI. Dante can kind of run, they have a primary and a secondary port. If one piece dies, it doesn't matter. If another piece dies, it'll pick up where it left off. We have a keyboard player who every weekend, he needs a new computer, but it just like dies. And so all of a sudden you just don't hear any keys because his computer dies, right? But it doesn't affect like the whole network. It doesn't affect like our soundboard or anything else. So think of redundancy. Like, where can you start small and start putting your money to where it can scale? And I know there's a lot of systems that you can use, like Churchfront gives a lot of like really awesome suggestions for how to start scaling things and where to start small, and Blackmagic has a ton of stuff. So just start thinking through those things. For Life Church and our church online, we use Resi as one of like three means of broadcasting. So we use Resi, we use a literal satellite where we call in the things, and then we use just an online protocol for streaming. So if there's any kind of failures, we are good to go. Infrastructure is a huge thing to jump into, and I know it feels like kind of it's probably a pivot a little bit, but it really is leadership. This is the level you're thinking at now, right? You're thinking systems. You've thought about your teams. Your teams are at the core of everything you do. And now to make them succeed, you have to think, what is scalable? What are we able to actually pour into? What are we able to build? What am I able to use somebody to do that would be successful, right? So really think of what that takes. But just remember, if you're doing a Dante, build a Dante network, build it the right way. Ask somebody help. They have free resources. You can go be Dante certified for free $99. And because I really don't like over spiritualize things. I'm not like that kind of guy who's everything's like, we're under attack or something. Like sometimes God lets things just happen, but every day as a leader, when you pull up to your church building, there's a literal war, right? Sorry, we got hit pretty hard yesterday. Ooh, real moment. The AC just stopped. It got really quiet. Our team's getting hit left and right. Like a leader we just found out yesterday has stage 4 lung cancer, right? But there's a target on every one of our backs. Coffee. So, spiritual warfare is real, right? So that's why we do these things. That's why we invest in the right systems, and because we want to have our pastors' backs, we want to have our teams' backs, and we shouldn't be jaded to think that the work that we do to build a system will keep it from ever failing. It's going to fail. It's technology. And so what we are going to do from now on, everyone in this room, is we're going to do the right things to set up our teams the right way so that when these things happen, we can do everything we can to prevent it, and we can make sure that there's a win on the other side of it, because what we do as a tech community or production community or worship is we aim for excellence. But excellence isn't a benchmark set by the church down the road who has more money or resources or anything else. Excellence is the absence of negligence. Excellence is the absence of negligence. And I totally stole that from my boss. He's not here, so I'm gonna use it. But that means that we're going to be prepared. We're going to set up our systems, and we're going to equip our teams to win because they're at the core of everything that we do, right? So, in closing, our main focus is not gear, right? Our main focus is on what? Our team, our people, Your new job when you get home is to what? Lead, build people, build systems, build teams. And like I said, if you're leading, you have a group of 20 volunteers that serve with you, and you don't have 4 or 5 people who you're really investing in and that they're able to pour down to, you're doing too much. You're spreading yourself too thin, because I don't think that you could tell me everyone's life story and what's happening in their life right now, right? But those 4 people that you pour into, you can really pour into them, and they can know those other 5 people's life stories, and they'll feel your presence based on what you're pouring into your team, right? So keep that in mind. If a little takeaway, once you start building that team, because you're gonna get people. The second you start letting go of something, word of mouth is the best way that we get anyone in our teams, right? They see a camera, they see a light, but like most importantly, we see each other and we see growth happening. And so you're going to get it. So we're going to do what? We're going to empower leaders. And to be an effective leader, we're going to scale down and we're going to replace ourselves, right? We're going to scale down our responsibility and our duty. And that doesn't mean we don't do the work anymore, but it means that you do what only you can do, right? If you're a great engineer mind and system builder, then do that. Find ways to push your team forward to succeed. But if you can delegate authority, you're going to win, and your people are going to win. And over the years, I've seen leaders of all ages, from when I was a 22-year-old dude to a guy that was 60 years old who would take charges from me to we're going to do this, and was on board, to the kid who's 14 just wanting something to do on a weekend, right, or during the week. You can delegate authority. And this 14-year-old kid that I had a few years ago, he's the best kind of kid ever because he was committed. So if you have a kid, don't think that you can't use him. Give them authority, because if they're not going to do it, they're going to flake, right? And if they flake, then you can just move on, no harm, no foul. But if you can get the people and you can really serve with those people and those kids, they'll grow up and they'll be such a huge core part of your ministry. And when you do that, you'll be amazed at how far it grows and how far those younger students and those people will actually pull in their parents, pull in more volunteers, everything else. So giving authority doesn't mean to just be to a certain demographic of people. Just keep that in mind. And if you delegate authority, you have to give clear direction. If you want camera operators to shoot a certain way, then you need to give them game footage of other people doing something, right? That's just one example. We can't empower people and expect them to win if we aren't clear with them. And then that bigger point, right, is that we have to give and expect feedback and be okay with feedback. And then finally, we equip people by building systems that work, because when we do that, we're honoring God actually with our resources, honoring our church body, and honoring the volunteer, right? Because we're all the body, and everyone in the body, no matter if it's just a regular attender to the person who's there every time the doors are open and to they're closed, we're all the body. We all make up the capital C church. But that's pretty much what I have for you guys today. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
I want to invite you to register today for our upcoming gathering. I'm going to put the link down below at the churchfrontlive.com. That's where you can learn more about the event. And make sure you look at the description below this video if you want to take advantage of any discount codes we have available for registration. If there's a discount code available, you will see it next to the link. If there isn't one, then you'll just have to wait for next time. If you found this video helpful, hit the thumbs up button, share it with your friends in worship ministry. Thanks for watching. See you next time.